Alright, what's up everyone, it's Matt Mrozik, and this will be the second work in progress on this Marvel vs. Capcom custom Wolverine. So a few things I did since the last video. The last video I showed you installing the magnets in the calves, the hips, fixing the gap right here, having to fix that magnet that got pushed in there. Another thing that I've done since then is I went ahead and, even though they were trying to be clever and sculpted the hair separately from this face, I went ahead and glued it on now, because the reason is the fit is not exactly perfect. So you see some shiny spots here, some epoxy. So what I did is I put some 5-minute epoxy on here. I put it in there and I clamped it together really tight so I could get this down as tight as I could, so that when I put this sideburn in, which I'm going to do here in a minute, there's very little gap. Same thing on this side. So it's going to create a little more work painting wise, but what I don't like about this is that there's a slight gap in the hairline. So I want to fix this before I do anything, because if I painted the hair, painted the face, then put the hair on, there'd be a gap there and it'd be really ugly. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to go ahead and glue the sideburns on. Again, it's going to create a little more work painting later, but I'd rather fill these gaps now than try to deal with that later, because it's harder to do. So it's a great concept, but if the fit's not there, then it's really kind of pointless. So they could have probably just saved some time and money casting wise if they just would have made this one piece, and that would have been a little bit better. Another thing I did is these teeth, when I put them into the mouth, there's a pretty, well, first of all, that lower lip had broken, so I tried to glue the piece on, but it was too small, so I fixed that. It's very hard to see. And then when I put the teeth in, there were gaps all the way around the teeth, so you could see like a gap into the mouth. So what I did, and I didn't record this, is I took I slathered the teeth in some petroleum jelly. I put them in there and I held them in place, and then while those were in there, I took some A's 2-part epoxy, and I don't know if you can see it, but I put it in all around the teeth. So now that when they go in there, they fit damn near perfect. So now if there's any little minor gap, it's not noticeable. So now they fit much better. So now I can still paint these separately and then put them in here. But you can see around the edges there where I got some A's 2-part epoxy to make the teeth fit better. So again, it's a great sculpt. The quality of the kit is okay. The casting is great, but the fit on some of the stuff is just not good. So it requires some work. So let's see, what else did I do? I think that's it. Oh, I also went through, and on these little pieces that hold the claws on. Oops, I can't lose any of those because they don't give me the extras, which is kind of a bummer, because sometimes on kits when they have little tiny pieces like that, they'll give you extras, or like a set, an extra of each of them in case you lose it, because if you lose it, you're screwed. Now these are numbered and labeled, and there was some resin sludge in some of these, so like this still has just a tiny bit in there, so they weren't fitting. So I was going in there and I cleaned out all this extra resin sludge from the casting. And let's see, this arm is not labeled. These little pieces are labeled, but like on this hand, they're labeled inside. I think you can see. Yeah, this is A. It's hardly hard to see. I'm not sure if you see it in camera. There's A, B, and C. So, and these have, some of these are labeled and some not. Here's C, so that goes there, and it fits very nicely. So I can paint those separate and put them on afterwards. Here's A. And some of these I had to clean up the female end for them to fit. Let's see. B is not labeled, but I have 1, 2, and 3 over here. So the only one that's left is B. And let's see, does it fit? Yeah, so those all fit very nicely. So I can paint those separately, glue them on. And then what I think I'm going to do, I need to talk to my client about this, because what I would like to do is, after done, leaving the metal cloth separate from the hands and shipping, because shipping a Wolverine with claws in is always really sketchy, because if they get jarred, it could break a piece. These actually fit in very nicely. They're a very tight fit. So I'm thinking I need to talk to him, but I want to keep them separate So that way when he gets them, he can just insert them. They're all the same, so they don't like fit in a specific spot. Some Wolverines, each claw is slightly different depending on where it goes in the hand. These are all the same, so you don't have to worry about it. There's like no like making sure you get in the right spot. But they fit very well. So I think ideally I'm just going to leave these separate and let him put them in when he gets the piece. So that's what my plan is. So, and when I glue these little guys in, I'll use epoxy. I won't use super glue. I'll use a little drop of epoxy. I'll put it in there so it's a really good strong bond, because if you use just simple super glue on these, when you go try to put the claws in, more than likely they'll pop off. Super glue is not good for anything that needs structural strength because it's too brittle. It has no tensile strength, if you know what that means. So, I assume you do. I mean, most people are pretty smart. So I think the only thing I've got to do left before I do any, before I clean all the parts and do any priming, is I've got to fix the little gap around here on the hair. So let's put everything aside, and also what I think I'll do is I'll have to look at I have to go back and look at the foam inserts for this. I'm inclined to just glue this hood onto the head. I don't know. It fits pretty good. I mean, you put it on there and that fit on that's actually really good, and the head just holds it on by itself with the magnet. So yeah, it stays on there pretty good. So we'll see. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. Kind of depends on how I'm feeling. Let's see. Hold on, I had it on there. Yeah, there we go. So if it's, well, see, now I got a gap there for some reason. I don't have a gap. I want to see something real quick. I'm just going to go like that. There we go. Okay. So no, I'm not going to glue it on because the way this fits is you kind of need to put the hood on the body first, because it's sculpted right to the body perfectly, and then put the head on, and then it fits very well. If I try to glue this on, now see, I've got a little bit of a gap there, so I need to see if I should fix that somehow. Oh, the joys of kit building. Which means I need to fix the gap on the hood. So that may be something else I need to fix. Actually, let's see, do you see that? If you don't see it with the sideburns, I'm not going to worry about it. I think we're okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're alright. With the sideburns cover it up. Okay. So that'd be a kind of a tricky fit. Yeah, so it's just kind of filling gaps and making sure that everything fits as best as it can. And whenever you have switch outs, you're going to have gaps. There's nothing you can do about it. So you try to make those gaps as small as possible. Alright, so there's no real trick to fixing this. Let me put him aside. So what, adding those magnets to the legs has made all the difference, because I can move him around as one piece and he's not wobbly. I'm not fearful of him falling apart on me. Okay, so this is not too difficult. I think the best thing I'm going to do is I think I'm going ahead and glue the sideburns on. And for those, I'll just use some super glue. Don't need epoxy for those, because there's no... The reason I used epoxy on the head is because when I showed you initially, when I put this on, I had to squeeze it down pretty good to get it to fit correctly. So that's why I clamped it to get in the right position. So for this, I'm just going to use a little super glue right here in this area. And I'm going to do a test fit. I'm going to pull this piece off again to see how much contact area. See, a good way to check your glue joint is if you put glue down, put the piece on, then pull it off to see how much contact you're getting. So this male peg isn't very long, so it wasn't sitting down all the way. So I want to make sure I get enough contact area with the glue. You don't want to put too much on it, it oozes everywhere. But you want to make sure you have enough to get good contact. So I always like to keep a Q-tip around just in case I do get a little squeeze out and I can wipe it off before it dries. So I'm going to squeeze that. I'm going to get a little bit of ooze out, and that might fill the gap. I squeeze it and then hit with some kicker. That might be all I need for that little bit of a gap on the sideburn there. And I will fill the gap here between the sideburn and the hair. So I think what we're going to do is for this hair, I'm going to go in there with a very thin bead of Aves and just fill that in. Now that means I can't do anything with this head till tomorrow because Aves takes 24 hours to fully cure. But I can wash and do the rest of the parts. Get those in primer. Because we're not going to get to the skin tone until later in the project. I'm going to do everything else, the clothing and everything, first. I always save skin for last because it's the hardest thing for me. Here we do the same thing over here. Again, it's going to create a little more work painting wise, but this will make sure that there's no really noticeable gaps anywhere. So initially when I saw this, oh great, they did the hair separate from the face. Great concept. The fit's just not there, in my opinion. The fit's not good enough to paint them separately and then put them together later. I'd have too much repair work after the fact, and that means I have to go back and redo my paint. And it is really, really hard to blend. If you have to repair skin tones, it's really hard to do a spot repair because there's so many layers of tones going on. It's really hard to get them to blend. So I'm just kind of soaking this area so the kicker goes down in there, and we'll kind of kick off that glue. So I'll let this dry and I'll come back and I'll show you what I do with the Aves. Okay, so I glued those. I went and gave it a quick scrub with some soapy water just to kind of get any residual glue or stuff off of that. So now I'm going to do is mix up some Aves 2-part epoxy. This is actually pretty old. It's really, I should replace this and just get a smaller tub of it because I bought this a couple years ago and I just don't use it enough to keep this much around. But so it's a 2-part epoxy. It still works. I mean, it still gets hard and stuff. It's just it's not as when you first get it, it's really, really kind of creamy. So you just mix it in 2 equal parts, A and B. It's pretty simple stuff. And this is actually way more than I need. I just sit here and I kind of knead it a little bit. So then this also warms it up and makes it easy to work with too. But if it was a newer container, this would not be nearly as hard as it is. And I've got some silicone rubber tools here. And we're going to make a little bead and we're going to fill in these gaps. Here's the bottom part of that lip that broke off. It was too small to glue, so I just kind of recreated it with some putty. I'm also working on something else over here, so trying to do some 3D printing while I'm working on all this stuff. Alright, I need this. It says to let it sit for 5 minutes. I don't let it sit, I just work with it right away. So I just knead it up until it's the same color. Okay, that's probably pretty good. It's a really small amount, so there's not much to mix up. I'm going to just make a really small kind of bead of this. That's probably pretty neat. And then we're just going to take a little bit at a time. And most of this will get taken off, but we'll put it on the face like that. And then we're going to push this into the gaps, and then we'll clean out any excess. We don't want to get it in the hairs because we don't want to lose that detail. And then also I should have my solve set. Where is that? Sorry, I need to get something out of the drawer. Of course, I'm not prepared. Oh, I already have it out. So I got my solve set here. This is stuff you use with Aves. I'm just gonna put a little bit in a cup here with a Q-tip. Put some on a Q-tip, then go in and smooth it out. Just help blend it and soften the edge. And if you get any in the hair, just kind of make sure you get it out. I'm going to do this all the way around the hairline to fill in that gap. And also the sideburns where they meet. So just pack it in there. Doesn't have to be pretty at first. You got enough time to work with this stuff. I don't want to do this with like Bondo because it dries too fast and I don't have enough time to work it and get it where I want. I also put some of this on my solve set on the little sculpting tool here. So I'm going to do this all the way around and then we'll come back. Alright, so it took about 15-20 minutes, but I think I got this filled in pretty good. I tried going around all the way around the sideburns, but I can't get any putty stick in there, so it means the gap is either too small for anything to go in there, or there's just no gap and it's filled with glue. So you can see there's a pretty good gap there. You can see this big bead of putty I put all the way around. Brought the point of the hair down just a little bit and resculpted the hair texture in there to so it'll blend in. And I'll know better once I get some primer on this tomorrow how this looks, but I think right now it looks pretty good. So, and I've been taking a Q-tip with some of that Solvaset on there just to kind of smooth out any transitional edges to help blend it in a little bit better. So we'll see tomorrow if I need to do any, just a light sanding on the edge, but from what I can tell right now, it looks pretty good. Really don't know until I get primer on it, but so that takes care of that. Filled in the gap here, gap there, and then basically around the top part of the hair and then down to the sideburns a little bit as much as I could. So I'm gonna let that sit aside, and that's got to cure overnight. So now what I got to do is I got to wash all the other parts in soapy water, give them a really good scrub from doing the magnets and stuff, and let those dry, and then I can throw primer on them, and then should get some paint down today. Hopefully I'll start getting maybe work on the yellow or the blue. I got to really I was given some pretty good instructions on the yellow. If you want some more of an orangish tone, which I prefer, because it shows up the shading a little bit better. And then maybe some instructions on the blue, because I got to do the blue on the boots first before I can do the black trim. So I got to spray those, let those dry, then mask it, and then do the black. So when we come back, hopefully we'll be spraying some paint. Okay, so I gave everything a really good scrub in soapy water, soapy warm water, and anywhere I use that petroleum jelly trick, like on here, I scrubbed it like 3 times just to make sure you get all that off, because if that's not off, then your paint's not going to stick. I wanted to show you something. Even on these super high-end kits, and this was a big issue on the well, no, this wasn't the issue. It was a different issue. Even on these really super high-end kits, you still see layer lines in the print. You can see them here, and here, and here. So some kits have them, some kits don't. I see them on just about every single kit. Now, to the extent at which you see them depends, I guess, on their finishing. So I think the kits where it doesn't show up the most is when the sculptor over sculpts the texture on the sculpt. So like this outfit has some texture in it. I think if I don't know who the sculptor is, unfortunately, sorry. Whoever sculpted this, if they would have over sculpted the texture, And if they would have added more anti-aliasing, which is a smoothing option, some of these layer lines would have disappeared a little bit. And also you notice when you get a lot of, this kit has no primer on, it's bare resin. A lot of times you get these custom kits, they've already been primed. And in the few times where I've actually had to strip the primer, go down to resin, they put on a lot of primer. So they're using a lot of primer to fill in those layer lines. So they're hiding a lot of details, unfortunately. So there's really no way around this on this particular piece. You'd have to basically sand all this out, resculpt the texture. But I wanted to show you that even on these super high-end kits, you still see layer lines in the printing. So it's not a perfect process. You know, it's just part of the nature of the beast. Now, when I paint this, you probably won't notice it. Now, if I did like some sort of technique where I painted, I went in there and did a bunch of dry brushing, they would pop out in a heartbeat. So you just got to kind of avoid doing any dry brushing techniques when you have layer lines like that, because they'll pop out. So as long as you just paint it with an airbrush or hand paint it, you're good to go. But even on these super high-end kits, you get layer lines. So yeah, it's just the nature of the beast. So everything's been washed. I just hit it in with a blow dryer. I'm going to go give everything a really good coat of Badger Stynylrez Res Gray primer. And then we're going to let that dry for, Badger says let it sit for 8 minutes. I like to let it sit for at least 30 minutes to an hour to give it, because I put a good coat on. So we're going to let that dry really well. And then I'm going to probably work on the yellow. And then if I can get some clarification on the blue, if I can get the blue and the yellow spray today, I'm in good shape, because I got to let all that dry before I go in and do the black and stuff like that. So we're going to come back and hopefully spray some paint. Alright, okie dokie. So I primed everything about an hour ago, grabbed some, and it's looking really good. So I got some clarification from my client as far as what he wants, and it's a little not confusing, but basically he likes what Sol did on one and what James did on another, and he kind of wants to combine them together. So this is where I get a little frustrated with some people, because I'm not Sol, I'm not James. So I always get references from Sol, which he's a fantastic painter, so I'm not sure if it's a compliment or what. So two things. Sol's photographs are always so dark. In my opinion, his photos are way too dark, and that's one reason. And when you're doing yellows and stuff, you have to make your photos dark in order to see the shading, because if you expose for other areas, then the yellow just goes flat. So I always tell people, if you want to look like Sol, send it to that painter. So he gave me some photographs, but I'm gonna paint it the way I think he wants it, based on what he said and not the photographs, because both sets of photographs from Sol and James that he sent me are too dark. So it's hard to tell colors when the photographs are improperly exposed. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start with yellow, or the yellow tone, I guess. I'm using my Iwata HPTH big spray gun, and I use Mr. Color for these. So I've got an assortment of yellows here, and initially I was going to do what I always do and lay down a color of orange, highlight, and then yellow on top. I don't think that's going to get me where I need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a base color of, excuse me, I just had lunch, so I'm kind of burping a little bit. I got some of this orange yellow, which I think is basically right where I need to be for the base color. So this is Mr. Color number 58, orange yellow. Based on what I've been told, I think this is the base I need. Oh, my mixer's dead. Alright, one second, I'm going to get a paint mixer. So in case you don't know, Mr. Color is it's a hobby paint. It's called a lacquer, but it's actually kind of like an acrylic lacquer. It's kind of like, so like if you're not familiar with paints, Tamiya, which is a very popular name, or Tamiya, however you want to pronounce it, is a hybrid acrylic lacquer, meaning that it's not really an acrylic, it's not really a lacquer. So when I ever use Tamiya, which is not very often, I thin it with Mr. Color thinner, not acrylic thinner, because then it sprays more like a lacquer. Now Mr. Color paints, you can only thin those with Mr. Color thinner. You cannot thin them with acrylic thinner or alcohol. You will not be happy. So I'm gonna mix some of this up, because I need to cover this up pretty good. So I mix this up usually like 2 to 1. So what I do is if I'm mixing a bunch, I'll pour a bunch in a cup. like this. Then I'll put some thinner in my jar. I'll mix that up to kind of get all the residual paint out of there. Because these things aren't cheap. These are about $3 a bottle. So I mix this usually like 2 to 1. Basically until it gets to spray the way I want it to spray. You know, there's really no hard core ratio. I always get asked, "What's your thinning ratio?" Like I mix it till it sprays, till it sprays the way I want, I should say. So I need to wear a respirator when I spray this stuff because it's nasty stuff. So I'm just gonna shoot a little bit on camera. It's just putting down base coat, nothing too exciting. So let's do the heads first, since they're smaller. So what I did on the heads, I drilled a little hole underneath so I could put them on a stick. I hope I have enough of this. If not, I've got another color that's kind of similar. But what I do when I'm doing base coats like this is I always make sure I do everything evenly. So anything that's got this yellow, I go through and I make sure I hit everything evenly. So I'll do this like one coat on this piece. Okay? Like that. And I'll do it on this piece. Like that. This way I make sure I get an even tone. Now we gotta do the chest, the legs. You can see I'm just kind of putting a light coat on it first. Like that. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to get everything base coated, and then we'll come do some shading. Alright, so I base coat everything in that Mr. Color. The first coat was Mr. Color number 58, orange yellow. And it looks pretty good, but I think it's a hair too orange maybe. So I'm going to go back in. And I'm going to mix on a couple layers of this number 109 character yellow. It's in the same family. It's just a hair brighter. So we're going to do that. I think that'll get me where I need to go base coat wise. So let me mix some of this up. 109. So let me make sure I got enough of this. I'm getting low on paint because of the COVID. Can't get them. Make sure I got enough just to mist on a couple of coats of this. And we're just going to kind of mist it on. It'll help even things out. We're just going to take this. I got my needle kind of locked down a little bit. And we're just going to mist this on. Yellow is one of the hardest colors to paint. Let's see if we can see a difference. Probably won't see it in camera. Yeah, this is just a hair brighter. That's all we're going for. Again, just kind of misting this on. I'm not covering up what I did prior. I'm just kind of tinting. tinting what we got going on. I'm trying to go based off the photos I have. I think this is kind of where the main color is. I gotta put my respirator on. So just misting it on, trying to even it out. Bring this up just a hair. I don't have a whole lot of paint coming out. It's pretty tightened up. So I'm gonna keep going over this until I get the look I want. I may miss 2 or 3 coats overall on everything, and then we'll let it dry for a little while. Until it'll dry down, it'll get a little bit darker. And then they'll let me know where I am. If anything, I may missed a different orange yellow on top. So we'll see. I almost forgot about the hood earlier. I was like, crap, I gotta paint the hood. And only the center part gets yellow because you got the little fins on the side that go black. That's all I gotta worry about. And underneath also, you're not gonna see it, but we'll paint it anyway. Now these heads have dried down a little bit. I'm kind of liking what I see, so I'm gonna do one more round of this on top of it. I think. See if I got enough paint to do that. I think so.
That's too much thinner. So this is a little thinner than what I had before, so I'm going to mix them together. Just so I have a consistent paint, consistent color, and consistent opacity. So again, I'm just going to kind of mix this on again. And then I'll try to judge it based on the photos that sent to me, but I think they're too dark to really tell. But from what I can tell, this is pretty much the color that they got. And I'll go in and add the shadow details. And he doesn't want it real drastic, so pretty subtle. You see, I'm turning this all different ways because if you just hold it one way, you'll miss underneath the muscles and stuff. So you gotta rotate the piece a lot. Make sure you get everywhere. So the main reason I'm fanning this on is because from the initial few coats, the paint was a bit uneven. When you fan it on like this, it helps even that out. So I'm putting it on a little bit drier to help even out any little inconsistency in the coverage. And it takes it a while. It's a slow process, but it's well worth it because that way you get a consistent base color. So I'm going to finish this up and then we'll come back.
Alrighty, so while that base coat of orange yellow was drying, I'm going to go ahead and base coat the blue too. I'm going to base coat it with Mr. Color GX number 5. It's kind of my go-to base blue, and then I always kind of adjust things from there. So it's pretty simple. We're going to go base coat this, all the parts that need to go blue, so the pants, gloves and boots.
And this I put on pretty wet because I have, this covers really well. I've got plenty of this here, so I can put this on pretty wet and basically within 2 coats get what I need. And it's a little bright right now, but I'm going to go doing the shading with a deep clear blue if I have any, and then we'll kind of bring it down a little bit. But this is kind of this will dry a little bit darker, so we'll base coat this and get the blue base coated.
Okay, so I got this yellow sprayed. I went ahead and hit with a little sealer, kind of matte coat. It's looking way more orange on my camera than it is in person. Not sure what it's looking like to you guys. So I'm going to go and do some shading. And right now I got my airbrush. I've got Mr. Color number 49 clear orange. I've got it mixed in my airbrush. Got it dialed down pretty low. So we're just going to go in here and based on the request, I'm not going to do this super crazy heavy. So you probably won't see this in camera at all. So I got my airbrush dialed in pretty light, so there's not much coming out. So we're just going to build this up slowly. This will take a while. So I'm not even sure that's showing up. I may switch to, I've got I have another color here that I almost mixed up, but I thought maybe it's a little too dark. But I think I may go to that. It's Mr. Color, this is GX Clear Orange. I think I may go to this. It may be too dark, but I have something in mind that I don't know. Or maybe what I'll do is, hold on, I'm thinking here, because this is a little too light, I think. I may add just a little bit of this deep clear orange to this. I usually don't mix custom colors because it's impossible to match them later. But I think in this case, I'm going to add just a little bit of this. It's not deep clear orange, it's just clear orange. I'm going to add a little bit of this to this to get a cross between these two clear oranges. One's a little too dark, one's a little too bright. Yeah, okay, that's about right. I think that's where I want to be. So I just added a little, and this should be enough to do the whole kit, I think. I hope. Actually, I'm going to mix up a little more just to be on the safe side. It's not going to take a whole lot. But I'd rather have too much and have everything match. So I'm off camera here mixing this up because I want to stay away from the piece in case I splatter or something. So let me get a glove on this hand so I can some paint. Sorry. All right. So now I got that mixed up in there. I didn't do a whole lot, so I should be able to hit these areas again without doing too much. Yeah, that's about right, I think. And delves down a little bit. So my client keeps talking about the perfect orange and yellow mix, so I'm thinking this might be it. Again, the reference photos I sent are just too dark. I'm kind of trying to guesstimate the look. So as far as a Capcom versus Marvel color, this is pretty damn spot on. It's more the Capcom versus Marvel yellow is a little more, it's got more orange in it than. So it's probably not even showing up in, maybe it's showing up in camera a little bit. And the tricky probably sending photos to him because, again, this will be one of those instances where he's like, you just have to trust me in what it looks like because my photos I sent him probably will not show this up, have this show up very well. Especially since he doesn't want it as drastic. So this is what I'm going to be doing for the next few hours on this and the arms, or not, so the legs, and then the heads. Just adding these shadows. Do it slowly. It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to do this, and then we'll seal it. I'll do this. I'll do the legs and the heads. We'll seal them and see what it looks like. So we'll come back later when that's done. Okay, so after I sealed it with some Krylon mat, that's what we look like. I may knock this down again with some all-clad mat just to flatten it out a little bit, but I think that's where he wants it. It looks pretty good. So got some nice shading. It's subtle, so it's probably not even showing up in camera, but based on the photos he sent me, I'm thinking this is what it looks like in person. So I think it looks good. So again, I may knock down the sheen a little bit with the all-clad mat. I'll knock the shine down just a little bit, which will make the shading pop a little bit more. But I'm going to do that, probably do that after this dries for an hour or so, and then send them photos of this, and hopefully that will get approved. So let me put that to the side. Now we're going to work on the blue. So I got all the blue pieces base coated and sealed, and now I'm trying to use some of this Badger Minotaur ghost tints. I haven't used these a lot, but they're actually pretty nice. The trick is just getting them thinned right. I don't have any Badger thinner. I did at one time, so I'm just using some water. I thought I had some Badger thinner at one point. I don't know. I don't think I have it anymore. What is this? Hold on. Nope. It's just a water-based paint, but I'm just having a hard time getting it thinned correctly. So this is kind of a really dark, blackish blue, and we're going to kind of do what we did with the orange. We're going to go in here and try to hit the shadows. Yeah, that's not doing what I want. It either comes out real wet or it doesn't come out at all. I can't. I don't know if I need to thin it more. Oops, that's the wrong thinner. Dang it, let's put lacquer thinner in there. Don't want to do that. Let's see if I can get this thinned right. The problem is I'm running out of all my Mr. Color paints because no one can get them in because of all the COVID crap. Even mail ordering seems to be difficult right now. Let me see if I get this thin and get going off. Come back. All right, I got it to start coming out. I just need to clean my airbrush a little bit. So, same thing with the orange. Gonna go in here and hit the shadows. Again, with these pieces, you got to turn them a lot in the light so you can see all the different all the muscles in the sculpt, because there's a lot of details in here you don't see if you just look at it one way. I'm getting some dry tip. One thing I don't like about acrylics is the dry tip. It just sucks. Don't use that. I keep putting the wrong thing in there. So I'm trying to put a little water in here. You have to go through my airbrush. I'm having a hell of a time. So also, again, trying to get light where I need to see it. So I'm going to stop recording because my kids are back with their friends and it's going to be really loud. So I'm going to try to work on this and come back. All right, it's going to be noisy for a little bit in the background, so my kids have a friend over. But anyway, I want to show you what I've been doing for the past hour or so on the blue. So this is before I did any shading, and this is after the shading. Now it's shiny because I haven't knocked it down yet, but this is looking pretty good. So you can see the color difference from this to this. So I'm getting a deeper, more vibrant blue after the shading, because when you go in to do the shadows, it kind of, the overspray kind of mists over everything and tones it all down. So quite a difference. This is the color I was going for, and this is what I started with. So I just got to shade this last fist, and then I can seal these, and then I can send pictures to my client tonight, and hopefully they get approved. We'll see. You never know. But yeah, so this is pretty good progress for today. So finished all the prep work and got the yellow and blue sprayed and ready for approval. So once I get all the final sealer on these, I'll show you one more time, and they'll be into this work in progress. All right, so as a final sealer, I went in and hit it with some all-clad matte and knocked the sheen down just a little bit, and I think it's looking really good. I'm not sure if the yellow is showing up in camera as far as shading goes, but it's there. It's pretty subtle. The blue's looking really sharp. Digging that. So maybe here's the leg. Maybe it shows up in the leg a little bit more. So I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to try to take some photos with not with my cell phone, because my cell phone adds a ton of red, with my DSLR. I'm going to let this dry down until tomorrow, because it's going to dry down just a little bit. And then I'll take photos and send them to my client tomorrow, so that way he gets a better look at what everything, the colors. But that'll be the end of this work in progress. And then if everything is approved by my client, the next step will be go in and do the black on the belt, on the stripes, and then the boots, and then we'll go from there, and also on the heads. So we'll go from there. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye.